Welcome to a glorious morning on the River Thames and the 128th rowing of the University Boat Race between Oxford and Cambridge. And even on that sunny June evening in 1829, when King George IV sat upon the throne and the challenge to race was accepted and enacted, the weather can scarcely have been kinder. It's recorded that when Oxford first met Cambridge, the men of fashion and rank gathered, and while the aristocracy presided over the ceremonies, it was also a festival of the common people. Well, today, 153 years later, along the course from Putney to Mortlake, the race remains a uniquely British event. And surely nowhere else in the world can so many stand and watch and celebrate without being charged a penny. Along the towpath outside the famous boathouses, the men who race themselves, dressed in their club finery, reminisce and recall their own glory or misfortune. While along the 4 miles, 374 yards of this testing stretch of river, families gather to play and to picnic and to revel in the carnival atmosphere of the day. The course itself is eccentric to say the least, first winding away to the right when the crew on the Middlesex side has the advantage. The start is here just above the lovely stone of Putney Bridge, and it really has been described as a battle of the bends. There are 3 bends, in fact, 2 favouring the Middlesex station and 1 favouring Surrey. But as the Surrey bend is roughly 180 degrees, it almost equalises the Middlesex bends. Well, now, from the start here at Putney, the race theory is that the crew on the Middlesex side, and don't forget they toss for positions, must go flat out to get the advantage of the bends. The boat on the Surrey side has a great incentive to dispute every inch of water, because if they can hold the opposition on that first bend, the advantage then swings their way. The result is that the first mile of this grueling course is a punishing test of speed and fitness, and Oxford hold the record to the milepost with a time of 3 minutes and 31 seconds. From the milepost, the Surrey bend starts to take over, and with the BBC helicopter coverage, the true pattern of the race begins to show. Has the crew with the advantage of the first bend got clear enough to cross and take over? And there's a mighty struggle to try and consolidate any advantage at the first of the really famous landmarks on this course, Hammersmith Bridge. There's no course quite like this in world rowing. After a fast start, strength, fitness and stamina take over. But in spite of the eccentric distance and shape of this historic event, in the past 70 years, at least a third of over 300 medals won by Britons in Olympic, World and European Championships have been won by men who competed in this race. So it's clearly played a massive part in Britain's international programme. From Hammersmith, the bend very much favours the Surrey side. First, there's Chiswick Reach, and then Corney Reach, and the difficult haul towards Barnes Bridge at about 3.5 miles. And the laws require the crews to pass right through the centre arch of Barnes Bridge. On this stretch, with the crews tired and the weather sometimes not helping, there has been known to be trouble. And in 1978, the unfortunate men from Cambridge sank.
Water pouring over, so they've gone into the dolphin effect and Cambridge are sinking. Cambridge are going down. That is the end of the race. There's no way now they can pick themselves up again. I thought initially equipment problems. There they go. There they go. And now it's panic. They have to get out of their shoes. You can see them now. They have these quick release straps, and now we must have the rescue. We must come in for the rescue.
Well, from that point, Oxford relaxed and they went on to win, part of the domination they've enjoyed in the last 6 races. Although 2 years ago, Cambridge gave them one of the closest finishes ever.
And they're level. Cambridge are level. We haven't seen a crew come from behind, not in my memory, certainly. And it looks as though Oxford have just made it. There's the finish. No more than a third of a length, if that.
So the boat race goes ahead today once more. And for only the second time in those 128 challenges, there's a lady in one of the boats, and that's Sue Brown, the winning cox of last year, who'll once again be steering the dark cruise. The race itself starts at 2:30, and from time to time, we'll be talking to some of the people who are so deeply committed. And also, of course, watching the important toss by the presidents for the choice of stations, at the start. And by the way, a word about the record. And the race scene here today, and it really is quite remarkable. Crowds, there are thousands and thousands of people brought out here by the good weather and dressed really for what is the summer occasion. Looking back through the record, this is the 128th rowing of the race. The first one rowed way back in 1829, and the match series, Cambridge won 68, Oxford 58, and there's been one dead heat. But I must say the sunshine really has brought out the crowds. But it was a very misty start to the day when the crews came down to the river to loosen up early this morning. Tony Gubber reports.
With the sun lost behind early morning mist, the River Thames at Putney was still and calm. But a splash of activity was about to disturb those paddling for their breakfast. Oxford were the first of the boat race crews to emerge, and low tide meant a long trek down to the water for their final muscle-loosening workout. Watching with a smile was coach Dan Topolsky. He'd seen it all before. So too has the number 5 man, Boris Rankoff, who's bidding for his 6th successive victory. The towpath looked strangely deserted, but this is the face of the boat race that the public don't see. The 6 months of grueling preparation and deprivation that brings a crew to a peak of fitness for the one back-breaking dash along the River Thames. Cambridge's preparations have been dogged by gremlins. The latest when their 6,000 pounds boat was holed by a floating door yesterday and needed emergency repairs. The Cambridge crew can't match Oxford's experience or pedigree. But as the dark blues pulled away towards Hammersmith, the Cambridge coach, Graham Hall, could reflect on the fierce determination of his crew not to be second again. The bowman, Paul Brine from Scunthorpe, is an experienced oarsman. A sharp contrast to the number 4 man, Nick Bliss. Nick had never touched an oar until he went up to Cambridge.
Adding half pressure. Are you ready? Go.
As Cambridge pulled away, the sunlight blazed against the floodlights at Fulham Football Ground. We won't tell you which of the crews left their wellies in a neat pile and which left them like this. What sort of conditions do you think we'll have today?
It's going to be perfect conditions, really flat, calm, lovely.
Who's going to win?
Well, I think we will win, but we could probably do it a little bit rougher.
Who's we?
Oxford, of course. It's just coming in.
A partisan view, but Oxford, up to 10 pounds a man heavier, are again the bookies' favourites. The conditions promise to be the calmest for years, with no wind.
Terrific. It's one of the best warm-ups we've ever had, so it's coming right.
Is it difficult for you to get keyed up because you've been in the boat race so many times? This is your, what, 8th year on the water, twice with Isis and Goldie, and 5 in the Oxford winning cruise.
Yeah. No, it's a terrific build-up every year. It's very easy to get psyched for this race.
In fact, one or two of the coaches, though, have said over the years that you almost need to pinch yourself. The day goes so quickly that it's come and gone before you realise it's arrived.
That's right. It tends to be a bit of a haze this late, but just got to keep concentrating.
No disrespect, but they call you the grand old man of rowing now, don't they?
Yeah, I know. I wish they wouldn't. I'm not that old.
What is it, 27?
That's all, yes.
Are you going to be back next year?
Oh, I don't know. Let's get this one done with first.
Well, Sue, you've been on the water for half an hour this morning. What's the verdict?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was going really nicely. It's just, you know, everything's working well.
There was such a spotlight of attention on you last year. One suspected that at times it was almost intolerable. Has it been easier for you this year?
It's been a lot easier. The one thing that made it that much more bearable last year was that we were such an outstanding crew, and we knew we were going to win, so I didn't have quite so much pressure on me during the race itself. This year, obviously, the pressure's on.
In fact, I was going to pick you up on that because the way you're speaking makes it sound as though you're not certain that you're going to win.
Well, this year? Oh, yes, we'll win. Don't worry about that. But it's going to be a tougher race than last year. Well, if we row as well as we did...
We'll have to duck.
If we row as well as we did this morning, we won't even see Cambridge.
And can you actually enjoy it, or is there so much pressure on you?
You can enjoy it once you've... yeah, you get very excited about the whole thing during the race, and once you sort of worked up into the spirit of things, and, you know, you're edging away from them, stroke by stroke. Yeah, you really enjoy it.
You enjoy going ahead and seeing them trailing in second, but what happens if it's the other way around?
I can't envisage that happening.
Cambridge returned without quite the same visible cheerfulness. No crew facing a possible 7th successive defeat could surely be expected to smile before the race is rowed. But there's a cool, clear determination about the challenger's Cambridge that promises to make this boat race a really close-run thing. Paul, I'm told you're the playboy of the crew and that you found it hardest to go to bed early and get up to go.
Yeah, well, Graham described me this morning as a total insomniac, but, you know, I had this terrible thing that when he tells me to go to sleep, then I can't get to sleep, and whenever he tells me to stay awake, then I'm off in about 5 minutes. But I think it's just a natural aversion to this whole sort of colditz regime we've been living under for ages now.
Is it worth it?
It'll be worth it when we finish and when we've beaten them. Certainly it will be, yeah. But up until now, it's been hard grind all the way. I mean, 40, 50 hours a week for the past 6 months isn't funny. And I'm not quite sure it's dedication or madness. I think it's madness.
It's a major slice of your life, isn't it? But of course it's something that you can cherish for the rest of your days.
Yeah, but it's also a major slice of my degree, if I'll be lucky to get it. I mean, last term, if I wasn't rowing, I spent my time in bed. So, you know, it's difficult. But there again, we do enough work just about to see us through. And certainly, you know, we have to dedicate ourselves once we finish this to getting back to the work, which we will easily do.
You've been on the water for about 20 minutes this morning. What are your feelings? Are you optimistic?
We don't have to be optimistic. We know we'll beat them. Simple as that. And it felt good this morning, which is unusual before a big race. Yeah, we'll win.
We hear about the 6 months of your life that is dedicated to the boat race. Is that really the way it's been?
Yes, it is, unfortunately. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've been going to bed at 9:30 just about, because you have to get up at 6:30 every morning. You lie in bed dreading the 6:15 alarm call. But, yeah, it is pretty boring as far as women are concerned and everything else.
Is there any pleasure in it for you then?
Yeah, pleasure when I finish an outing or when I finish a weight session or whatever. A funny sort of pleasure. The sort of pleasure you get when you've been to the dentist and had a satisfying tooth extracted, maybe.
I've never heard the boat race described as going to the dentist.
Yeah, a good clean pull, I think. A good clean pull.
They do say that having had that long preparation, that the day itself goes very quickly and almost you need to keep pinching yourself to remind yourself that this is actually the day of the race.
I've not needed to pinch myself so far. No.
And are you going to break this run of Oxford victories?
We certainly are. Be wasting my time if I wasn't, wouldn't I? For the last 6 months. No women, no wine, and no song. Plenty of weight and rowing.
You don't seem like the sort of fellow to waste his time.
I'm not, no.
And the boat race due, of course, to start at 2:30. The crews will go out 2:10, and very shortly we'll be televising the toss for stations. A lot of noise here at the boat race because the toss for stations is about to take place. We've got here the two presidents and also the umpire who will toss and explain the details to the two presidents. There's Roger Stevens in the light blue of Cambridge and Nick Collington in the dark blue of Oxford, and the umpire is Mike Muir-Smith, who will explain the details of the toss, which is a ritual, in fact, which has taken place for many, many years.
The holders, Oxford, will spin the coin, and Cambridge, the challengers, will call.
And this is a gold sovereign presented to the boat race for annual use by John Snagg, and it's dated 1829, when the first ever university boat race took place. So Nick, as the Oxford president, he spins, and the Cambridge president, Roger Stevens, calls. Heads is the call. And the umpire says that Oxford have won the toss, and therefore, Nick, as the Oxford president, you have choice of stations.
Yes, we'll take Surrey.
You'll take the Surrey side. Well, obviously, that's right. Brian Johnson in the background confirming that. That's all right. Let's just have a word now about the start of the race and a word from the president. Just as umpire first, you've also got to talk to the crews. Do you talk to the crews like a steward before the Grand National or not before the race?
Yes, more like a Dutch uncle, I think.
And what do you expect from them at the start?
I expect them to stay on their stations and keep out of trouble.
And it's not easy to umpire, of course, if things go wrong, is it?
Not at all.
Anyway, have a good race. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to you, Roger Stevens. not been the best of past 6 years for Cambridge, but I'm told that you've got the crew together working harder to new standards and principles. Is that true?
Certainly it is. We're out to give them a licking today. We're really going to go off that start as if we mean it.
And really, the start is very, very important for you as a lighter crew. You're really going to test them all the way and try and get the advantage of the bends early.
That's right. If we keep nibbling at them all the way, we should be onto a win. We're much fitter than them, we know that.
Now, having lost the toss, what do you think the choice of station means?
I don't think it's too important today. I think it's going to be a close race all the way I don't think either crew is sufficiently powerful to put in tactical bursts to take advantage of the bends.
Nick, while you were talking to Brian Johnston there, Roger's just been saying that he didn't think the winning of the toss was too important.
No, I don't think it is too important. It's going to affect the way both crews are going to race this race. I think the outcome would be the same whatever station we chase.
I think, Roger, you were saying, and Nick didn't hear it, that you were really going to test them right from the start.
Well, we're expecting that, of course, but I think we're a very fast crew and going to be a difficult crew to beat. So.
Also, he did make the point that he thought the Cambridge crew was much fitter.
Much fitter? Well, they always seem to be under this impression, but we've been doing the same amount of training for the same amount of years. I really can't see how they can be fitter than us. And it's not just fitness that wins boat races either. There's a lot more to it than that.
You're much the heavier crew. How much difference, Roger, does the weight of crews make?
I don't think we're worried about that at all. It doesn't worry us.
Technique, much more important.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's one of our major assets, I think.
And it has been reported, actually, that you've been looking more and more polished as the days have gone by approaching the race.
Yes, the crew's getting better and better all the time, and we're hoping to build on that today. We're looking for the row of our lives, really.
But having said that, a lot of power in the Oxford boat.
Yes, we're not the prettiest crew to watch, but we've got a lot of power, a lot of strength, and we're not going to give up.
Good. Well, we hope it's a really good race. We had a cracker, was it, 2 years ago? Not quite so close last year, but you're obviously... But what interests me about boat race presidents, and it comes through with both of you, I interview an awful lot of sportsmen before and after events, but there's an awful lot of aggression in the boat race, and it seems to be men. Roger?
Yes, there certainly is. It's not personal hatred against the Oxford camp, it's just a factor of having put so much training into one race, which is so crucial to win.
Do you agree, Nick? There is a real aggression there.
Yes, we've been looking forward to this race for a long time now, and it's as simple as that, really. We don't want to lose. We're going to win.
Fine. Well, we hope it's a race worthy of the occasion. Thank you both very much indeed, gentlemen. Thank you. Well, I'm moving across to have a word with Penny Chuter, who is Britain's national coach and, of course, also in charge of the British men's national team. Now, Penny, the point was made there, neither president thought that the winning and losing of the toss was important. But, of course, Oxford won the toss. You know the choice they've made. Do you think it's important?
Well, neither president would obviously admit when asked that it was important, but I think it is. We know that Oxford are the favourites. They're the stronger, more powerful crew, and in theory they should win. But I think they could well underestimate Cambridge because they've got a lot of spirit and they're sharp off the start. Cambridge have lost the toss. They're on the Middlesex station. And off the start, they'll obviously be aiming to take the maximum benefit from this bend to see if they could get clear of Oxford by about the milepost. And if they could, then they can cross over ahead of Oxford and take their water. Oxford equally will be trying to hold them off to this point when this station, the Surrey station, then gets a big advantage all at once.
Yes, now, Roger Stevens, the Cambridge president, seems absolutely convinced that they'll be the faster crew from the start.
They have shown in training that they are very sharp off the start. Oxford are also strong, but I think certainly for a minute and a half, Cambridge could be just as fast, if not faster.
Nick Connington was saying, well, they expected to be tested there. He said, we may not be the most polished crew, but we are very, very strong.
Yes, they are strong. Their technique looks very rough, and they, as I've said, they will expect those tactics. Equally, as you mentioned just now, Cambridge are a lighter crew, and so they're very happy that we've got no wind or just a slight tailwind to help them, particularly off the start. Yeah. So this should see a very fast start of the race, and I think it will particularly test the experience of the Coxes, maybe for the first 3 minutes.
How aggressive can we expect the Coxes to be? I mean, we've heard stories about intimidation possibly, and perhaps it's happened on occasions in the boat race.
Well, the umpire's launch will obviously steer the middle course, and obviously both coxes will try to get as near to that point without actually interlinking blades, or knitting blades as we call it. So they will be aggressive and try to make the other crew give way.
It's a real test for Sue Brown, but she has got the experience of one race behind her, a successful race as well. And talking to Sue over the past 18 months, it does seem to me that as a person she's matured a great deal.
Yes, I think she has. She dislikes the press. The thing is, last year Oxford went off so fast that they were clear ahead after about a minute, and there wasn't really any problems after that in terms of the steering to get the best water for either cox. And this year Ian Bernstein, you know, will obviously be trying to make the most of this inside bend early on.
I mean, really what we're talking about is a test of the cox's nerve to some extent.
Yes, I think many people tend to underestimate just how important the coxswain is in this sort of race, particularly where tactics and these bends are important.
How important is knowledge of the water here in the Thames, and the tides and where it runs best and everything?
Very important, because again you need to know precisely where the fastest stream is, and you have to weigh up the pros and cons of taking the shortest distance from A to B and cutting the bend, or going slightly outside it and keeping in the stronger, faster water.
So Penny, I mean, the race has got to be won and lost possibly in the first mile, you reckon?
Well, you can see that the start and the finish are at the same angle. If one crew can get ahead of the other, then in fact the stations aren't fair throughout, because the crew ahead can cut across in front of the other one. But if they are forced to race side by side for the whole course, they are in fact rowing the same distance.
Yes, actually Roger Stevens made a very big point too about the fact that he thought Cambridge were fitter. Has he got any real reason to believe that?
I think this year Cambridge, particularly I think with the inspiration of Roger, have made a big effort. They have really been pushing on with their training the whole year. They started at the beginning of the year with a new attitude, and they've been push, push, push. And I think today we will see this same attitude. They'll try, and they will try again, and they will push, push, push all the way.
How important is weight? I mean, there's a difference of £10 per man in the two boats in Oxford's favour. Is that really important, or is it not important on a day like this?
Well, obviously a good heavyweight will always beat a good lightweight. There's no wind today. Had there been a strong headwind, that would have put the lighter crew at a greater disadvantage. I think a difference of a stone or so isn't very important. It's more, I think, the sharpness and the quickness and being aggressive, as you said earlier.
What interests me, Penny, is that you're making this a much more open race than bookmakers have made it, and amateur tipsters. I mean, you're not dropping Cambridge out by any means. What is your tip then?
In training, it is clear that Oxford are the stronger, more powerful crew. But that's in the training situation, and we're now talking about the race. I have to say that Oxford should win, but I would also say that Cambridge are going to have a very hard go at them.
But Oxford to win and Cambridge much closer than people expect.
Year, yes.
Thanks, Penny Chuter, national coach, and we'll see whether that works out that way.
Crews to take to the water, and the first crew is Cambridge, attempting to break this sequence of 6 Oxford wins. A light crew, Cambridge. They're 10 pounds a man lighter than Oxford. And it's the biggest difference between the two crews in the university boat race for more than 20 years. The last time a winning crew conceded a similar weight was way back in 1951. Oxford then were 9 pounds heavier than Cambridge, but they sank in that race and lost the rerow. And in fact, when you look back through the history of the race, a crew has conceded 5 pounds or more and won only 9 times. Well, Cambridge seem to be in some bit of disorganisation getting into this boat. They're all going in at odds and ends. Normally they go in from bowman first. But we can have a look down the boat. Now we look first at stroke, and this is Simon Harris, who is a very slight man indeed to be stroke. He's only 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighs 11 stone 5. Simon Harris from Desborough and Queen's College, Cambridge. studying engineering, and comes from Maidenhead. At number 7, Ewan Pearson, King's School Canterbury and Jesus, just over 6 feet tall, 12 stone 1, reading natural sciences, and lives at Canterbury. At 6, Charles Hurd, sometimes known as Chuck Hurd, 19 years old, weighs 14'10", and is 6 feet 4 inches tall, big man, reading engineering. He's from Shrewsbury and St John's. Bruce Philp at number 5, 19 years old, and he is the heaviest man in either of the boats. In fact, he's half a stone heavier at 15 stone 3 than anyone else in this Cambridge boat. Bruce Philp, Bryanston and Downing, reading natural sciences, comes from London. At 4, Nick Bliss, Barnard Castle and Corpus Christi College, and he is the oldest man in this boat, and he's only 22 years and 8 months. Weighs 13'10", stands 6 feet 2, reading law, comes from Burnley. Nick Bliss. And then at 3, we had the president, Roger Stevens, 21 years old, weighs 13'12", stands 6 feet 1.5, King's College School, Wimbledon, and Emmanuel College, Cambridge. And he occupied the same seat in the Cambridge boat last year and rowed for the losing Goldie boat in 1980. Reading land economy, comes from Molesey. Number 2 is Alan Knight, 19 years old, 12 stone 8, just under 6 feet tall. Hampton Clare, reading natural sciences, comes from Teddington. And bowman is Paul St John Bryan from St Edward's School and St John's College, Cambridge, reading domestic science, comes from Scunthorpe. He's 22 years old, weighs 12'9". Average weight, 13 stone 3 3/4, 10 pounds a man lighter than the Oxford 8. The cox is Ian Bernstein. He's 19, stands 5 feet 6.5, 7 stone 2, reading medical science, comes from Kenton in Middlesex. So Cambridge now paddle down to the start, just above Putney Bridge. And now Oxford begin embarking. And a bow is the president, Nick Connington, Hampton and Oriel, who's won the toss for Oxford and chosen the Surrey station. He's 21, 12 stone 10, 5 feet 11 inches tall, and his 3rd year now, of course, in the blue boat, and he's never lost a boat race. He's rowed at 2 previously. Reading physics, comes from Sunbury. At 2 is Nick Holland, Radley and Oriel, 22 years old. He weighs 13'12", just over 6 feet tall, and he's stroked ISIS to a 5-length win in the reserve race in 1980. Reading engineering science, comes from London. And then at 3, one of the twins in this boat, Hugh Clay, Eton and Magdalen, 20 years old, 14 stone 2, 6 feet 4.5 inches tall. And of course his twin brother, Robert Clay, is at stroke in this boat. He's reading law, comes from Farningham in Kent. At 4, another one of the blues, old blues in this boat, Richard Young, King's School Canterbury and New College, 25 years old, 14 stone 8, and 6 feet 3.5 inches tall. He rowed 3 in the boat last year, and 2 years ago in the ISIS boat, he was rowing 5 there. He's reading respiratory physiology, comes from Chislehurst. At 5, the veteran, Boris Brankov. He won't thank me for calling him a veteran. He's only 27 years old. He's the heaviest man in the Oxford boat, 14 stone 12. Bradford Grammar School, and now St Hugh's College, Oxford, which of course is a women's college. He's a lecturer there. He was the president of Oxford 2 years ago, and today, if Oxford win, he'll be the first man to row and win 5 boat races. Although there was a cox back in the 19th century called CRW Tottenham, who coxed Oxford to 5 wins. At 6 is Stephen Foster, Brentwood and Pembroke, 22 years old, weighs 13'11", another of these very big men in the boat, 6 feet 4 inches tall, and he rowed for ISIS in the same seat last year. He's the secretary of the Oxford University Boat Club, reading classics, comes from Bures in Suffolk. And then at 7, Alan Kirkpatrick, Durham University and Oriel, a freshman, 22 years old, 14 stone 8, stands 6 feet 2 inches tall. He's reading agricultural economics and comes from Belfast. And then at stroke, the other twin, Robert Clay, Eton and New College, 20 years old, 13 stone 6, 6 feet tall, and stroked Isis to their 4.5 length win last year. Now, of course, the interesting thing about this boat is that Robert Clay here strokes on bow side. So the crew are the other way round to what one would normally expect to see. So he is stroking bow side, and then back the bowman, Nick Connington, he is rowing on stroke side. And finally, the Cox, the young lady who made such tremendous news last year as the first woman ever to take part in the boat race, and she's in the boat again. Sue Brown, Taunton and Wadham, 23 years old, weighs 6 stone 11. She's 3 pounds heavier than she was last year, 5 feet 3 inches tall. Reading biochemistry, comes from Honiton in Devon. So Oxford are on the tideway. Once again, Albert Andrews, their boatman, has been in charge of them, and in fact this year it's his 30th race in charge of the Oxford University boat, and his fellow boatman for Cambridge, Alf Twin, who's just back after a rather serious illness. In fact, this year his 39th race in charge. So these two boatmen for the universities are really loyal servants of the two clubs. And so Oxford paddle away now down to the start, and just look at the crowds on the banks. It's such a marvellous day that it really has brought people out in their thousands to come and watch this 128th University boat race. So the two crews are on the water, the race due to start at 2:30. What we can do now is to go up the course with our helicopter and just see what these crews have to do. And there we are, Putney Bridge below us, the boathouses on the left-hand side. And the left-hand bank, of course, is the Surrey bank, and that's the side on which Oxford will be rowing. Over on the right-hand side, the famous Fulham Wall you can see down there, and that's the early bend advantage for the crew on the Middlesex station. You can see the waterworks over there on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side coming up is Fulham Football Ground. Just down there, that white grandstand that's visible there. And Fulham in Division 3 at home today, playing against Carlisle. And just above Fulham Football Ground, you can see that the Middlesex bend runs out. Now, at this point, they will have a very, very slight following wind. It's an east-southeasterly wind. We'll give them a little bit of help, but there's so little wind today that it really isn't going to make very much difference. The water is absolutely smooth, and it's hard to remember a boat race that's been rowed on such marvellously calm water. Now you can begin to see how this huge Surrey bend, which in fact turns right through 180 degrees, begins to take over on the Surrey side. Over there on the right-hand side, wharves and factories. And now you can see how the bend begins to turn very sharply, and there in the distance is Hammersmith Bridge, one of the main timing points. Famous iron suspension bridge, where about 1 3/4 miles when they get to there. That bridge was built in 1887. And now, just above Hammersmith Bridge, they reach the apex of this great Surrey bend. You approach this bend going north, and you leave it travelling south. Over on the Middlesex bank, the beginning of the M4, Hammersmith Town Hall, the famous Dove's Pub. Many a historic building over there. And down on the left, the famous St Paul's School, who provided so many blues for this university boat race. Now you can see Chiswick, the little island in the river over on the Middlesex side. Famous landmark or watermark in the history of the boat race. And as you can see, the bend is still turning. Gives you some idea of the advantage a crew has on that Surrey station, assuming they take the best of the water. Sun gleaming off the Thames today. And now as we continue up the course, so we begin to see the Surrey bend running out. Over on the Middlesex bank, Duke's Meadows coming into sight. famous landmark, of course. Used to be owned by the Duke of Devonshire, but bought for public use, for recreation. And in fact, those meadows cover over 150 acres. And now, finally, the river turns again the other way, and the Middlesex station has the advantage of the bend as we come towards Barnes Railway Bridge. There it is in the distance, Duke's Meadows on the right. So if the crews should be very close at this point, the crew on the Middlesex station will then have a slight advantage going into the final stages of the race. Barnes Bridge coming up, that's about 3.5 miles up the course. That was opened way back in 1849, that bridge. And the two crews must shoot the central span of that bridge. At this point, they've come 3.5 miles, and now they begin to think in terms of the finish. Mortlake Brewery, over on the left-hand Surrey bank, is one of the great landmarks, of course, over there, as we come towards the close. The brewery's been here since the 15th century. It marks the 4-mile distance, and people always say, of course, as a joke, that they row in this direction from Putney to Mortlake because nobody in their right mind would want to row away from a brewery. And there's Chiswick Bridge, and the race finishes just below the bridge here, and by that time they will have come 4 miles, 374 yards. And the finish now, we're just about passing over.